Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross, and today I'm going to continue my segments on looking back at 8th edition codexes. Today is going to be the Tao Empire. Tao are, I want to say, one of the newer races, but I think they came into being around 2003, 2004, 2002, somewhere around that range. So I'd say, they're fairly old now. But they've certainly had quite an effect on the tabletop. Obviously, the sort of ranged preference of Xenos forces. And very, very different to some of the other ones like Tyrannids, etc. How this works is that I'm going to have a look at how the force of ended in 7th, transitioning into 8th. Have a look at the rules within the codex, what works, Warlord Trades, the universal rules, their tile sets, etc. Then I'll have a look at the roster, which is part of the interesting one I want to discuss more than anything. So with that, let's have a look at the Tau. Tau were extremely competitive in 7th edition in a way that, to a degree in 8th edition, kind of the same. In that, they gave up a lot of areas, they gave up their competitiveness in areas, and psychic and combat, in order to do things a lot better. Shooting. Also, they are actually far more mobile than people may give them credit for. They probably did not excel so much in Necrons. When Necrons got their Decurion, I believe that Tau got some kind of hunt one, and it didn't boost the Tau as high as when Decurion boosted Necrons, but Tau were just simply strong at their core. Now the way that Tau are made more effective in 8th is slightly different, but the essence is still there. If you blast your opponent, then what's the problem? They're gone. It's fine. So we come to 8th. Tau overall have done pretty well. They do have a few weaknesses, to be fair. Stack a huge amount of minus to hit, and Tau will suffer. But then again, who doesn't when they get loads of minuses to hit? That might be tricky going into 9th. If you deploy pretty poorly, then some good movement tricks could end you as well. However, deploy well, possibly corner up in a few key units and shoot them on the field, and it's fine. So again, like many other forces, deployment is key. Now, towards the end of 8th, I think Tau did suffer a little bit more. Let's face it, everyone did kind of suffer under the second ruling of Space Marines. And the importance of mission relying on sometimes board control can work to their weakness towards the end of 8th. When the chapter approved stuff came in, there was a lot more importance of playing the mission, not just destroying your opponent. And I don't know if we've put the battle reports live. We did a bunch of 8th edition ones just before we got hold of 9th edition ones. I think we've got about 6 battle reports in backstock for 8th, which we might release just, within a week. We'll just go, here's a bunch of 8th edition ones that we didn't post. But I know when Tau did appear, boy, did they shoot me a lot. But they lost most of their games. Why? Because they just ran away with points. I may have like one model left, but the Tau still lost because they couldn't gain the victory points, because what David was doing was essentially trying to do his best to damage me, but he would not take over the board control. And I feel that's where we really did see Tau's major weakness was they had the ability to board control, but giving up points from their damage abilities was really hard to justify. So I suppose in some ways Tau have suffered due to mission changes, but the fundamentals Tau are there. Blast until nothing's left. If you need to castle, go for it, more abilities, and just keep blasting. The universal rules. Let's start with the one I've never been that enamoured with, and that is for the greater good. So you can overwatch with units that are being charged, like essentially with backup units from the units being charged. Fine. Maybe better when taken as Tao Empire, so they get 5 up overwatch, but then again, I've found ways around it, whether it be by staggering units or forcing an opponent to overwatch something they don't want to really overwatch in, but the risk is that then they may just tie down units. Generally, it's been okay. Sure, there will be that one time in 8th where you had a Riptide and you're like rolling with a massive gun, you got like 3 or 6 shots or something, and all of them hit and you obliterated your opponent. You went, oh, it was awesome, great good, it's amazing, nothing gets near me. But there will be like that one time it worked out well versus all the other times it did not work out well. And I feel that I could probably tell you more about those times than I could tell you about the one time I was obliterated from the greater good. I generally think it's a fine ability, and I feel that it's fine now that in 9th, Tau is going to be the only faction that can overwatch without, paying command points, which is fine. I have a few problems with the overwatch becoming command point base, mainly for flamers. But I think Tau getting that makes them a much bigger buff, which is fine. So yeah, overall, kind of now, and I'm not really sold on it. Yeah, big thing, Tau, if they had flamers it'd be a lot better, but they don't. So that's not ideal. If they had flamers, oh boy, it'd be scarier. I know they've got the Evacra, and that is scary. So next one I'll go on to is Master of War. One of the commander abilities that frankly should just be in the commander data sheet. Does seem odd here, almost like filling a space. I feel there should be something more for Tau here. But hey, anyway, commanders have two abilities, Kaoyun and the other one, Monka. Kaoyun is the obvious one to go with. Castle up, turn 1 and hit hard. That's the strategy just about every time I play Tau. That generally is how it goes. Monka is harder to pull off, again encouraging mobility for Tau, but Kaoyun is the one that most people open up in the first move to unleash a strong turn 1 and then maybe move out. Terrain is probably your best defense against this. In fact, it's highly advisable if facing Tau. Maybe think about turn 1 just shielding yourself a wee bit. But you know, the Kaoyun is the one to go. Then again, we do have Space Marines, you know, and they just laugh in Chapter Master, which gives them essentially this ability every turn. Just at the cost of a few command points. Drones. I am not sure, maybe other than Terrain in 8th edition there has been any other rule that has been errated, FAQ'd, reworded, etc. more than drones. Just to ensure the wording is right and that, you know, things work out well for drones. I'm not the biggest fan of drones. It can sometimes be a little bit too, you know, a bit of a too good and a bit of a pain. There are ways around it, though I hope you have the firepower to deal with them. But, you know, otherwise it just makes Riptides, for instance, incredibly hard to bring down. Really, really hard. It hasn't affected me so much, but I know in a lot of competitive games there's people taking like 30 plus drones and they're just taking Riptides and blasting as much as they can, and then the Riptides, the drones are just essentially free wounds because it's so reliable. 2+ to ignore it, to put the wound on the drone makes it a little bit good. Tau Seps, considering Tau have no real interest in combat or psychic, they actually came off pretty well with their variety of the ways they can shoot, and this is due to their Tau Seps, which is they want to do simply as that, they just want to shoot. There's a mix of mobility, defensive, and a little offense here as well. It depends on your play style. Me, I prefer Sekia. That reroll is extremely useful, I find. The leadership, less so, though it has actually saved me in a few games. David prefers Borkan as he likes the rapid fire weapon extended range and also that darn Evacra, which is good with Borkan. The Psychic Awakening even does not bad as well. A couple options here, mainly to help Crisis Suits extensively, though I feel the whole of the greater good was almost made to try and help Crisis Suits. However, of the Tau side. However, we are focusing on the Codex, and I always like to mention the ones that I think need to be rethought going into 9th. This will be the only Codex where if there is like an Overwatch 5+, I won't be like, bin it, because Tau is actually fine. Like Admech have got it, and I'm like, bin it, because Overwatch on 5+, but you've got to spend 2 command points to do it. Nah, bin it, not good. So Tau is fine. Also the Sekia Part 1 +1 leadership. I don't really like it. Something a bit more effective. Maybe battle attrition, some kind of better effect there. It would be nice. Anyway, the ones I would replace. Vyra is fine, but I hate the advance and treat rapid fire weapons, assault weapons. It's fine, it's actually not bad for Tau. It's terrible for Chaos Space Marines, so, but I would like to see a wee bit more fixed up. And I know Farsight Enclave, they got a lot of love and greater good that makes them good, but Farsight Enclave is tough to recommend because it is very, very punishing for Tau in terms of the way they use. You have to be a very good player to pull off Farsight Enclave. So if you've got, you know, a good bit of bravery on you, then go for it. Go Farsight Enclave, but it's a difficult one for me to recommend. Warlord Trades. This section does not seem as strong. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it's stronger than other codexes, but typical playstyle sort of favour too. Precision of the Hunter, if you're going 4-weapon commander, kill, great, fine. Or through Unity Devastation for aura ability for the castle, which is David's go-to. There's a few mobility ones, but Tau mobility is hard. Tau have mobility, but they just want to somehow sit with 3 Riptides and buff them up and shoot everything to hell. So It's hard sometimes to recommend Tau mobility. I feel Exemplar of the Calyun could have been better, maybe make an aura ability for reroll wound rolls of 1. I'm cautious of giving a faction too many reroll hits, reroll wounds, but I just feel for this one it might have been quite good. Stratagems. Tau have 25 stratagems codex to choose from, and with 6 locked behind set tenets. There's about 15 in for Greater Good, which is good, and then some more for Farsight Enclave. But generally they follow the format of let's try and fix units that don't really work in Greater Good, and there's a lot of them going let's try and fix Crisis Suits. But let's focus on the codex. That's what I want to speak about. Generally they are fine, I like them. Command and control nodes can be excellent, really good reason to take a commander. However, I do like command and control nodes. There is danger to giving a lot of reroll hits and reroll wounds to an army. Again, as I said, got to be very cautious that command and control node is good, but it is giving a lot of then potential reroll hits and reroll wounds. Anyway, I like to highlight a few that need to go when 9th is coming. So failsafe detonator, a little bit low, and maybe if there was a version that was more higher for Riptides, that would be good. You know, maybe they, but generally not a fan of these sort of, here's 1 command point, D3 mortal wounds. I don't find them so great. They're okay. Maybe if it was a Riptide, then D6 would be ideal. Hunting hounds, well, you got a fixed crew. We'll speak about that later. And support turret replacement, I didn't realise Tau really had turrets, but apparently they do, and for the command points, probably not worth it. Relics, going to put this simple. For the Greater Good, simply outmatches this in every single way. I mean, majorly. Sure, Puretide Engram may see, you know, maybe not bad, it'll gain 2 or 3 command points, but the Greater Good just brought some crazy stuff in it. So I'll mention the ones in the codex that need to go because they're just not even consideration. Multi-sensory Discouragement Array. I love the name, like that is dystopic as anything I've ever heard. Multi-sensory Discouragement Array. Wow, the rule sucks as well, but good name. Onager Gauntlet, I like the idea of combat Tau, and we'll go into that later. I'll rant about that later. And many of you may have just switched off the very idea of me talking about combat Tau. Please listen, I will speak about it later, and I'll try and justify it. It's not really about sometimes being killing combat. We'll go into it. I just don't think the Onager Gauntlet, you give up like 1 hit punch, and it doesn't even hit that well. It hits not bad, so like, I think it's like strength 10 minus, but it's, you know, d6 damage might just cause 1 wound, not great. Seismic Destabilizer, because we ain't shot at many buildings in 8th edition. Yeah, we didn't shoot at buildings very much. Maybe with Fortifications changing in 9th edition, I think they're trying to push them a lot more. We've seen the Necron and Space Marine getting Fortifications, so maybe we might see more use then, but the Seismic Destabilizer overall didn't do well. So into the roster, that's done with special abilities, obviously no psychic. Let's speak about the roster. I'm going to go into special characters, troops, elites, etc. Special characters. Let's start off by not discussing the, like, really rather complex all round, very expensive, I don't think practical, but they brought the rules out in chapter approved and in the Greater Good. They really wanted to push the 8, and seems rather odd, but hey, fair enough. Tau actually have a good number of special characters, but I don't really see them as much. The generic HQs for them do really well for the points you pay. Commander Shadow Sun actually does not bad, you know, as a cheap support. Won't do as much in damage as a commander, but she is cheap and she does have some good support drones around her. So, yeah, not bad. Good for command and control node, I believe she can do. Commander Farsight is actually all round a not bad character, you know, swings in combat of 4 attacks, I think it's strength 8, I believe, maybe more, and does a bit of damage. I know stratagems help Farsight Enclave a lot, but without supporting combat units, I feel it's hard to recommend Commander Farsight. In general, you know, Farsight Enclave is not for the faint-hearted. Onva, morale booster, but morale has not been great in this edition, so nope. On-She, same as Commander Farsight, combat orientated but nothing to support. Not a bad price though, but a cheap Ethereal is better probably. Maybe if you're afraid your opponent might, you know, come in with like low units and charge in, you know, then yeah, he might be able to do quite well, but generally kind of tough. Darkstrider, bit of a flip the coin here, you know, he offers his +1 to wound for one of your infantry units against one of your enemies, versus the volley fire from the Cadre Fireblade. But you know what, you can actually do both. +1 wound is not bad, just the AP of the usual Tau infantry let them down. If broadsides had the infantry keyword or could be affected by this, Dark Strider would be would be a very go-to HQ. Long Strike is an interesting one on his own. Alright, good, few buffs, hits reliable, not bad. However, if you take him with hammerheads, so if you've taken a spearhead with a bunch of hammerheads, that +1 to hit aura is really, really nice. The problem is that hammerheads are kind of hard to recommend because in the area that they cover, which is shooting, there's a lot of things to recommend over hammerheads, known as Riptide. However, if you're into old school Tau, you want to take your hammerheads, get Long Strike to lead them. You do pretty good then. It's a surprising amount of options here, but their main weakness is that the generic HQs really just do quite well. I think a few of these units need a wee bit of a retweak. You know, is it on She, the one that's on Va? I get what they're going for there. Maybe needs a little bit more to him as well. I mean, like, he's also dead in the lore. They're just using like a hologram and some kind of, you know, scary society going, he's still alive, don't worry, but I'm pretty sure he was killed by an Imperial assassin back, I'm trying to remember all the lore. Oh, I can't remember what it was called, the campaign book, but I'm pretty sure he was killed and they're now using holograms to tell Tao, don't worry, he's okay, because he's like the spiritual leader. So maybe drop and get something else in. You know, so push them ahead. Rules like Long Strike and Dark Strider make them a bit more warranted. Ethereals for sure should be reworked, and Farsight, well, I'll talk about that later. HQ, as for HQ, overall very, very solid. You have commanders to flavour to your taste, very good options all round, something that many forces lack, a solid ranged HQ. Then you have Ethereals, which offer solid buffs, and then Cadre Firebraids, also offering solid buffs. Sure, I could complain that there's no combat hero, but you've got to accept that that's probably not popular with Tau. Maybe a larger stealth suit would be not bad, you know, a massive one, maybe a Lord of War, that's iconic, that would be really, really nice. Sort of HQ stealth one, that would be really, really cool. But overall, I'd say with our generic ones, not bad. Troop choice, only thing I'd actually maybe say there is that there's two commanders that are a bit the same, one that you can make a 2+ invul with an extra piece of war gear, and one that's like +1 wound or +1 toughness. Kind of same old on that one, and then you have the flying one, which is actually not bad because it's getting mobility. Troop choice, 3 choices into troops. Strike team, breacher is an interesting one. The strike team is a good choice for long range sedentary work, making sure your battlefield is properly screened. Breacher's harder to pull off in general, getting stronger the closer you get to your opponent. Good stratagem though, and for greater good, that allows them to get, you know, the maximum efficiency at maximum range. So that is quite good. If the close range one was 2 damage, then I would say they would be far more efficient. I've noticed in games that Dave plays that, you know, he gives up board control by taking the strike teams and keeping them back. Breachers, even one squad just moving forward and then putting out some shots, might actually make a bit of a difference here. Then we have crew. You know, your auxiliary unit in general, they fill a cheap troops squads, you know, they're not bad for that, they're cheap, they get board control, fine. Your opponent probably doesn't want to shoot at them, but if they've got bolters, they probably will, just to clear them. But I feel that there's just a big problem with auxiliary units in the Tau force, and I'll speak about that maybe near the end. So lead choices, plenty of options here, 8 in total, but there's just one problem. The Xv8 Riptide battle suit, a monster of a unit that in most games does exceedingly well. Often when you think Tau, you think how many Riptides. It is one of the best units probably in the game, no shadow of a doubt. It does require buffs around it to get the most of it, but then again, what top tier unit doesn't? But generally it's quite consistent. If Tau players are going to start anywhere, Riptide won't do you wrong. Go Scale has also done well in 8th edition. It gives you powerful damage and some board control. I think it will suffer in 9th edition because it's not so easy to stack -1s, and even when you do, it's still maximum of -1, so it might suffer a bit there. Changes to certain things will make this less attractive, but it's still quite good for board control. Xv8 stealth battle suits are also not bad. Sure, they will not go around killing as much as other units, but they do help in board control, which is very important and serve their purpose. Get to objectives very quickly. In fact, I think you can pretty much deploy them. And then there is also -1 tit, which is not too bad, and they're not too expensive. 2 wounds, overall, not bad. So the rest. Crew Shaper, Crew Riders, Farsight Marksman. I struggle to justify auxiliary units in general with Tau. They need to be rethought to make them relevant. I feel the sort of call out for Crew, you know, Codex Crew or Codex Auxiliary Tau has become the new sort of sister bath, you know, Adeptus Sororitas. You know, we need our plastic sisters. But you didn't hear that from me. But basically, I think Auxiliary of Tau, there's an interesting concept, but it's not working out on game. So how can we make that better? I think that applies to just about all the auxiliary units. Now, Xv8 Crisis Suit, or their bodycard ones. It does seem that this edition, I've said this many times, hates iconic units. I remember seeing one of the first units I saw for Tau was the Crisis Suit and the Strike Teams. Basically, I remember the artwork, I believe, for the Codex with the Crisis Suit coming down and then a Strike Team, or I think they were just Fire Warriors back then, pointing forwards, of the very first Codex that came out. And generally, you know, like Terminators, like Elite Infantry, they've dropped in points massively because they thought maybe just making their points cheaper would help them. The Greater Good did breathe in massive amount of life in them, offering a lot of better abilities in terms of stratagems, in terms of set abilities, in terms of prototype weaponry. There's a lot to offer on Strike Team, on Crisis Suits to make them better. But again, you are coming up against things like the Riptide, etc., that do this role better, and you don't have to spend command points, you don't need to be sept orientated, etc., to make them work. So Crisis Suits, I think, do need to be rethought for 9th edition, just to make them, how can we make them that bit more relevant? And also, this is where I'm going to come to the controversial take I say on Tau, on they need close combat units. Now, they don't need to be damage dealer units, though they can be more defensive, though I'd love to see a Riptide with a massive underslung blade. I think that'd look cool. Crisis Suits coming in, chopping stuff apart. Fine. I get people won't like that. I just like the Riptide with a massive shield and a massive blade undersling going in. That'd be cool. Crisis teams, I feel maybe if they had massive projectile shields and they're designed more about impeding your opponent, you know, maybe not about so much killing them, basically like pushing them back, or just working up, you know, portable shield barricades, a bit like the slab shields for Ogren in Astra Militarum. I just feel that it would add a lot more difference to it. I get that they don't want to be in combat, but how did the most battle suit army not end up with anything that's like combat orientated? It seems odd. But I do get like it goes against the lore maybe a wee bit, it goes against their ideology. If you don't want to make them combat, make them, you know, Crisis Team as in blockaders or something, I don't know. You know, designed to hinder opponent, then jump back, hinder, jump back. I think that would be cool, it would offer a different way of play. I'd also love a Riptide with underslung massive blade, that'd be cool. Fight me on this one. I've got a feeling that many people will be like, nope, not wanting that, but I just think they shouldn't have psychic ability, I agree with that, but there should be some kind of defensive combat one. That would be cool, it would offer a different variety. I'm also a very combat player, I play combat Necrons, I play combat Admech to a degree. So it's kind of like, that's why I struggle with Tau, because it's just shooting. I feel if I had some kind of push forward ability, that'd be nice. But that's just me. Let me know your thoughts on that one if you disagree with me. My two ideas would be combat Riptide and defensive Crisis Suits, I think would be quite a good different addition. Fast attack choice, a bit dull section here, nothing exceeding, but I usually like my fast attacks to be quick, up close and personal, which Tau don't do well. However, solid unit or two here. Pathfinders are almost essential to give you a bunch of marker lights, you know, to marker light something so that you get a bunch of buffs. TX4 Piranhas I actually really like. Seeker Missiles are a bit of a waste, but they give board control option. I almost like the most, you know, because they're extremely quick. Small amount of firepower, heck, just give them a fusion blaster, run up to a unit that's like a vehicle and blast it with fusion blasters. Fine, I think it's pretty good. Tactical drones, so we all know tactical drones. Essentially, you know, shield drones tend to be the one that most people go with. Me and David, if we play Tau, we tend to buy our drones on other units, so you only need 2, and then we move them over to the Riptides to protect them. It's just that if you end up taking them from the fast attack slot, you have to take them a unit of 4 or more, and never take more, because if you take them in a bigger squad, then they'll be more vulnerable to, say, bolt of fire or my Castellan robots going, is that a unit of 9 drones? Well, I'm just going to shoot them down with 1 damage weapon so I can fire the heavy stuff at your Riptides. Basically, you force your opponent, if you take 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, or 4, 4, 4, 4, 4 in fast attack 1, you force your opponent to then have to split their shots, and sometimes stuff will be wasted. If that is the case, depends on that one. Then we have Kroot and Vespids. I think in future Tau really need to think about what they want to do with these forces. As I said, maybe there's attachment bonus for just going an auxiliary force. Maybe there's some kind of leader, I don't know. I just struggle a wee bit. I don't mind Vespids, they're quick, shoot well and have an alright save, but generally just still feel out of place. And Kroot Hounds just get shot to bits, let's face it. Probably need a bit of love there. Heavy support. I love the Xv8 broadsides, like their new version of them. I remember the old ones were like shoulder mounted, the one underslung. Awesome, I think it looks amazing. I think we recently got them repainted as well, and they look great. I have a bit of bad luck with them. That time David hurled a Helldrake at them turn 1, and I just basically shut them down for the entire game. They're versatile, plenty of shots. I feel if they had the infantry keyword there'd be a lot more buffs for them, but you know, I think that'd be bad in 9th edition, because then they'd suffer the heavy roll, because I think in 9th edition only infantry suffer -1 if they carry it. I don't think any other stuff does. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I haven't worked out the best loadout, but they have quite a few, and with some greater good benefits, they're a solid unit. XV8 sniper drones, if you don't bring the marksman, then don't bother with these at all. They can be killed far too easily, but rapid fire 48 with their sniper shots can be quite interesting, as long as you don't go after like a supporting character that's like toughness 4, not 2 up save, then these guys may be able to pick them off quite efficiently, and then your opponent will probably shoot them back to make sure they don't do that trick again. Now for the Hammerhead and the Sky Ray Gunship. Sky Ray Gunship, turn 1, unleash the missiles as long as you have marker lights, then call it a day with them. That's kind of what they do. I feel they should be strength 9 to make them a bit more interesting. Strength 8 just means that they, you know, what they want target, they're not going to wound as much. So I feel they just need to be a little bit stronger for them to be better. Hammerheads, again, another iconic old school unit that's suffering this edition. Not exactly, you know, I've not exactly used them so much in this edition, though I don't think it's great, but, you know, basically they shoot, Riptides do it better. That's kind of it. The railgun, obviously being the most iconic, is terrible. I thought neutron lasers were rough, but then I looked at the railgun and I was like, oh, that's not good. So yeah, a bit more needs to be addressed there. The ion cannon is actually not bad. If the overcharge was more reliable, as instead of it being heavy D6 it was just 6, then it'd be awesome. I think that would be really, really good. So I think just making that, you know, even solid 3 would be quite good as well. I feel if you want to add into Hammerhead, I like the ion cannon, I think that's good, just make that like heavy 6 would be fine. I'd say then the Hammerhead, the railgun needs to probably maybe shoot out maybe a bit more shots or something. And then I feel that the Hammerhead should have a horde clearing gun, like one that's maybe like strength 5, heavy 20, you know, like a Gatling gun of some type, just puts out loads of shots on hordes. That'd be really, really nice. I know we've got things that can do hordes quite well, but I think on a Hammerhead that'd be really, really cool. Dedicated transport, Devilfish, I mean, helps board control, gets troops places, it's fine, it does what it does. I've got no recommendations for it. Flyer, Razor Shark Strike Fighter is interesting. It should go after ground targets rather than flyers, which is unusual because I think most flyers try and target other flyers. It's fast, doesn't offer board control and doesn't shoot as well, hard to recommend. The Sunshot Bomber can be fun though, 5+ mortal wounds is not reliable, though I think it's 4+ on infantry models. Will harass infantry, it was really good against me once. I think David bombed a Zangor unit and just put out a bunch of mortal wounds on them, so it did okay. I think it killed like 7 or 8 of them, so it was a good roll. Generally not reliable and does not suffer as much as other units. Now, if the bombs, for instance, maybe slowed down units, a bit like Thunderfire cannons, I'd say it's almost a must-take. But the mortal wounds, if your opponent takes, like, if you're facing Custodes or something, maybe it'd be not bad because they do have a lot of infantry, but if you're facing something that didn't have much infantry, this would struggle a wee bit. Fortifications. Now, I really love the Tau fortification look. Now, I haven't played these at all in 8th edition, so I'm not going to make any... I don't know how to recommend, say they're bad, they're good, etc. I'd love to see more Xenos terrain. I think we are going to see more fortifications in 9th edition. I know that Necrons and Space Marines are both getting fortifications. I hope to see more like that. As I said, I haven't played this much in 8th, but I did see that the drone port had some good ways to work around it. I think you take that plus a Cadre Fireblade and you can basically be a lot more reliable, but there's more efficient ways to do it. Basically not bad way to get marker lights, but generally take Pathfinders, they'll do it a lot better. And finally, the Storm Surge, Lord of War. I feel it's very lackluster, the Storm Surge. I know if you spend a turn you can put down the heels of it and it'll shoot a lot better. But there's just been some things I felt a bit weak in that one. Now, Greater Good had a stratagem that allowed, I think it was like the modular weaponry or something, it allowed you to, you didn't need to roll for the amount of shots. It was just the highest amount, except on a Storm Surge, and I'm like, ugh. It just doesn't seem, every time I've used Storm Surge, it's not done as well. And I feel that's really been a bit to its hindrance. The missiles were a great concept, but there's many things that do like just a solid 20 shots. Heck, I think the Punisher Gatling thing for Ashmelt Arm, if it doesn't move over half, it's firing twice 40 shots. So these missiles, for what they were supposed to do, just feel a little bit left behind. I think they need to be upgraded a wee bit. The big major cannon thing hasn't done as much as I thought. Again, I would just take Riptides. Yeah, and the Storm Surge does need a little bit of a rethink, because I love my Lord of Wars. I think they should be iconic units, that when they come they should be feared onto the battlefield. They should be just like big scary units, and I just feel Storm Surge, heck, I'll tell you an occasion, I overcharged I think once or something. I shot at Rob's Harlequins, and I shot at them and for some reason it bounced back or something and killed my Storm Surge. I killed my own Storm Surge. That should say it all. What happened? I was shooting at Harlequins, but it is what it is. And that's kind of it for Tau. Now I think Tau do fine. Like, the problem with Tau is that they're boring to play. You go, I'm going to get a Riptide, I'm going to get a few, I'm going to get 3 Riptides, I'm going to get maybe a, Vakra, got my strike teams, I've got everything set. Why do I need more? Why take Camerahead? Why take this? Everything does the same, and it's a scale of what does better. And that seems boring to me. They need to think about the auxiliary units, what they want to do with that. There should be a detachment bonus or something to make them more relevant. Maybe a bonus for them, center objectives, etc. There should be maybe different ways of shooting, as I said. Maybe the Hammerhead should have something that deals with hordes better. That would be much more ideal. They've got their prototype weaponry, which is quite good. I stand by there should be a combat element, or at least a protector unit. Crisis Suit protector unit should be in Tau. May disagree on that one, but it's just at the moment when I play as Tau, which I've not done in a while because I did really badly at them, or play against them, they just feel a bit dull. And sometimes if you don't do well, you'll lose, not because you haven't destroyed your opponent, because you just haven't managed to play the game as well. And yeah, that's kind of where I want to end up in this one. I'm intrigued to hear what people think of Tau. I think in 7th edition they're absolutely hated. 8th they're not bad. They're not as hated as Space Marines, but they're okay on that one. So I'm interested to hear what people say of Tau. What would you like to see from Tau? What do you want to see? I want combat. People may disagree. What do you want to see? Let me in the comments, and we can talk there. So thanks again. Check us out on social media, where you can obviously see our upcoming projects. Got a few of them on the go. And then you can also check us out on Patreon, where you can help support the channel, bring you more content, because we absolutely love doing so. So thanks again, and we'll see you in our Tabletop Assault Battle Report.